met a lot of founders who are pretty nervous to hire. Sometimes it's because they just have never hired somebody before. A lot of times it's because they have hired someone and something went drastically wrong. And now they've got some trust issues, but they're trying to be a good leader and overcome those trust issues. And yet there's still this hesitation, this nervousness, this seed of hesitation and doubt that is blocking them from really experiencing how awesome it is to have a great assistant by your side. And in this video, I'm going to break down why you might be experiencing this, because the interesting point that I have noticed in this pattern is that I don't just see it with brand new entrepreneurs who are figuring out their first hire, their first assistants. I see this happen in very capable, very smart, seasoned founders, people that have read the leadership development books, that have hired teams before, maybe when they were in corporate, the founders that are genuinely trying to build something real, genuinely take things off of their plate and delegate and not be a hoarding micromanager, and yet they still struggle with delegation, which can be so frustrating because on paper it's like, hey, you're doing all the right things, so why is this still happening? Why do you still have this feeling of, I thought I hired a good person, I thought I hired someone capable, why am I still the bottleneck? Why do I feel like I still have to be involved in XYZ? That's not the feeling you want when you start to delegate. And it's frustrating if you've tried and you feel like you're doing the right things and still end up feeling that way. And what I see happen is founders usually come to one of two conclusions. On one side, they might think, oh, okay, well, I hired the wrong person, got to go back to the drawing board with interviewing. On the other side, I see founders who conclude, well, some things just can't be delegated. These are things that I just have to do myself. Both of these feel like logical conclusions. I empathize with both of these because you're just trying to make sense of a very frustrating situation. And yet I would argue that both of these conclusions generally are the wrong conclusion. Sometimes, hey, you know what? I'm not going to defend a bad hire though. Sometimes you do just get a piss poor hire that was super good at presenting themselves in the interview and flips a switch when they get hired. I have interview strategies to help prevent that from happening. But hey, that does happen. Okay. You sometimes get a bad hire. And sometimes you might be trying to delegate something that really is a CEO founder decision. Okay. But most of the time, what I see happening is really you're starting to delegate, you're starting to hire and figure things out based on some invisible assumptions, some assumptions that you haven't totally thought through. And I'm going to give you some examples in a minute on that. But I want to set the scene a little bit more so we really understand what exactly is Sam talking about here. So for a little extra background and clarity, I run a US-based virtual assistant agency. We help to pair founders, small business owners, even small teams with US-based virtual administrative, executive, and operations assistants. We also help to recruit when the need is more of a W-2 type of need rather than fractional contracted support. I spend my days listening to other people's brain dumps of what they need, what kind of support they're looking for, and then going and interviewing people for those needs. And my background is all in administrative, project management, leadership support, process improvement, Lean Six Sigma, organizational health, all the fun stuff. So I'd say I'm rather skilled in figuring people out and spotting the patterns in process and people issues. All right. And typically the founders I work with, when they go to hire somebody, they are already at capacity. They're already overwhelmed. Sometimes I will get that founder that's like, I know I need to hire because I know I want to do XYZ in the business and I can't do it alone. Cool. Typically though, they're still kind of already operating at capacity. I work with a lot of high achieving, high performing, visionary doer, idea rich founders that just can't help themselves but come up with ideas and then go do those things, right? So typically the piss poor advice that they've been given is hire when you're kind of at 80% capacity and just hand off the administrative work. Well, most of those people don't even know what 100% capacity looks like for themselves. And saying something as admin work can mean a whole bunch of different things depending on what your business actually is. All right. So what ends up happening is they set about, okay, I think I'm going to hire for maybe these tasks, and they try to find that person. They don't really have a great strategy going into their job description, their interview, how they're going to hire, how they're going to onboard and train. Sometimes I also see someone on the other side of the pendulum, though, that they go way down the rabbit hole of being overly detailed in certain things and wanting all their SOPs in place. And they're kind of missing the big picture of what it means to find your assistant that's going to be like your right-hand person, whether that's at the executive and operations assistant level or more at the administrative, more office managery level. So let me jump back to those invisible assumptions. These are assumptions that have been living in your head and are decisions that feel so second nature to us that we don't feel the need to draw them out, to really clarify them. And if you followed any of my content, you know that I live on two big pillars in business: clarity and simplicity. And those are actually really difficult for a lot of people to find, but they are so essential. Some of the invisible assumptions that you're making that you likely think that you're clear on, but are not actually clear enough. You could be assuming that you're clear on what exactly you want to have happen. So then when you hire someone, that assistant thinks, oh, this person's clear on their priorities and goals. When in actuality, you're not, especially if you've gotten overwhelmed, decided to delegate, and then because you've read the good leadership books and you're all into professional development, you said, okay, I'm going to set KPIs or I'm going to set expectations based off these tasks. The big picture you're missing there is you are not defining what does success look like when this person is doing their job well. This person doing their job well means these other cool things can happen for me or for my business. You're instead a little bit too tunnel visioned on, hey, I know that they're doing this task well because this other thing is happening consistently. You get very granular on expectations based on the specific bullet point task on that job description rather than like big picture, what does this mean for you and the business? You could also be making the assumption that you're clear on what you want to be doing once this other person is handling these tasks. You could be like, what do you mean, Sam? Like, obviously, I would know what I want to be doing. Like, I'm over 100% capacity. I'm a high performing, high achieving doer. Like, once this person does X, Y, Z, I still have a million other things to fill my week with. The issue there, though, is that what you're filling your week with might not actually be strategic. So what I always recommend to founders is, hey, slow down, figure out what your job description is. What exactly do you want to be doing in your business? I've kind of walked through this process in some other videos before, but the quick and dirty of it is, what does your business need to function? What needs to happen for you to achieve those goals? Where do you want to be involved in those tasks, processes to make the business function and achieve those goals? And what's left over? That's what you delegate. If you haven't walked through that process, then you hire somebody and your assistant comes in and they start doing things based off of the task list that you've provided. And you don't always know, okay, where exactly is it most effective to be spending your time? So then how you're delegating is more of like general relief rather than really a strategic leverage in the business. The third assumption you could be making here is that, and this is something I see so often, is that you think that your assistant is going to speak up when they see something that needs improvement. What generally happens, because let's assume that you have hired well, you've hired someone that's capable and competent and all those wonderful things, they're going to likely suggest improvements based off of limited context, the limited priorities that they were given, likely based off of those other invisible assumptions. And whenever they come up with an idea or they present a problem, it's going to fall flat for you. It's not going to feel like, oh yeah, like that really helps me, because it's not in the context of big picture goals and you kicking ass in business. None of these are uncommon issues. I see this happen all the time with very capable, seasoned founders that know their shit in business, but just haven't thought through creating strong foundations for delegation. A lot of times we think, oh, a strong foundation is going to be a super detailed SOP, when in reality, we need those other pillars. Let me kind of give you an example of how this played out with a client last year. So we had a client who wanted an assistant to really be like his right-hand person. He's a solopreneur, a consultant, and this would be like the one other person on his team besides a video editor or something. So he wanted someone that was going to wear multiple hats, really come beside him and help him realize what else he could be doing in the business. Totally reasonable expectations. But he started her off with some lower level work, which is also okay if you need to build trust. He started out handing her off some like pulling social media clips from podcasts, helping to schedule a weekly newsletter, and overall just really helping his content to be more consistent, to have a more consistent online presence with an already effective marketing strategy. And a few weeks in, when I was checking in with him, he wasn't totally excited. It was like not totally disappointed, but like, oh, it's going fine. For me, fine is a red flag. I don't like that word. I want you to be excited that this person is on your team. But he was a little bit confused because he's like, well, she's doing the things that I've asked her to do. The goals that I've set for her role, she's meeting those, whatever like the 30 and 60-day goals are. Those are being met, but there's not that, wow, this person is really helping me feeling. So I asked him 2 questions. I first asked him, what's the actual goal behind your marketing content? How does the consistency in your content, or rather the content that you're just putting out there, how does that actually benefit your business? So I don't want to know what success looks like for the task, because success just means you're getting X number of clips per week and those are actually being scheduled, right? That's what success currently means for this task. But I want to know, how does that contribute to your goals and contribute to the business? The second question I asked him was, I said, are you delegating things that actually free up mental space for you? What I hear is that you're delegating some small things just to get them off of your plate. Again, that's fine if this is more of like testing trust and seeing if they can even deliver and you can trust them with bigger things. But if she's proven that, how do we then graduate her from this? So if you were to ignore maybe the things on your to-do list and just thought about what are the things that you think about day to day, what's really taking up mental space, what are like the incessant amount of decisions that you have to make that contribute to better revenue, to better client experiences, all of those things. If you thought about those decisions, what are they? And then what maybe tasks could you delegate that are related to that? So once he thought through those things, it reframed how he looked at delegation. And it shifted some of the things that he was handing off to her plate. And what would you know? She started executing really well on those things and then started proposing ideas that actually improved how both of them worked, and proposed ideas that then got his gears turning in all these other directions, which benefited both of them. So the assistant didn't have to change. It wasn't a bad match between him and the assistant. It was just the context of what the assistant was working on and how that work benefits the business. That's what changed. Because a really great, capable assistant, they can execute well. They can learn new tools quickly. They can follow processes or develop new ones. They can come up with ideas and improvements. What they can't do without big picture context, without a high level of clarity on certain things from you, is magically know how you make decisions. Optimize for outcomes that you haven't even named yet. Replace the thinking that lives entirely in your head and you haven't brought them into your head, into your world, which I know can maybe feel scary for some of us when we've got shiny object syndrome and ADHD and you feel like you're a hamster on a wheel with ideas, but you've got to let them into your brain. You got to let them see the messy behind the scenes on how you make decisions and where you want the business to go for them to really become your right-handed person, and for delegation to not feel like this heavy to do, but rather feel like this awesome strategic leverage in your business. So if you feel like in the past you've been using delegation as a relief valve rather than that strategic leverage, I'm going to encourage you that you don't fall into the faulty conclusions of you hired the wrong person, or you're just bad at delegating, or you've just got to do it yourself on all these tasks. I instead want you to try to sift through what is missing in how you're going about this. Are you missing hyper clarity on what your priorities actually are? I've talked about this before in my own failures of business where I set goals that sounded good but weren't really, the vision for the business. So vision, goals, priorities, is all of that aligned and thought through really well. If that's something you struggle with, I highly recommend reading Traction and kind of understanding the EOS way of defining your business. Are you super clear on what exactly you're going to be doing when you delegate these other tasks, what your job description is? And are you clear then on how all of those tasks then benefit and contribute to the overall success of the company? If you feel like you're the type of person where, you could figure that out on your own, but it's way easier to just talk through it and have someone pull all the messy, tangled spider webs of ideas and things that you have in your brain, have someone pull that and kind of streamline that, then that's exactly what we do in our delegation strategy sessions. If you've made it this far in the video, then I'm going to make an assumption of my own that, hey, a strategy session, someone listening to you, you just brain dumping on what you want to have happen in the business and how you want an assistant to really be plugged into that's something that will benefit you. So I want to invite you to think about booking a delegation strategy session with me. It's a 2-hour session. We're going to pull everything out of your brain on that and get clear on what exactly that assistant should be doing and the type of assistant that you're looking for and how to find that assistant. All right. So if you're interested in that, head to oxosvs.com/book just to chat with me about, hey, is a session the right fit for you? And then we can look about getting you officially scheduled for a session.